Hello, welcome back. So I'm going to start on reading the December 2020 edition of the Light Paper, a Truth Paper, link in the description. And so without further ado, let's fire away. Let's make it a full screen mode so you can read along if you wish. Okay, so the cover article is Vaccine Trials Answer a Few Questions. British Medical Journal. Now, due to the sensitivity of this topic, I am not going to read this article out because, I'm sure you're aware of YouTube's quite arbitrary community standards application these days. So I'm not going to read that out, but it's here. What I will do is I'll slowly scroll past it, and if you wish to read this article, go on to the link in the description where you can go to the website of this paper, download the December edition and read it for yourself. It has this other small article here, the 12 not 5 days of Christmas. Because we're already in January, I'm not going to read that either, but I will read this one, MPs in Serious Dereliction of Duty, by Darren Smith. Let us list the ways in which this once free country of ours has descended into some kind of Orwellian totalitarian state, with even worse on the horizon, under the watch of those who are supposed to uphold freedom and democracy for the people they purportedly represent. Police violence. A man in Liverpool, already on the ground and in custody, had his head repeatedly punched by what appeared to be a police officer. A 72-year-old woman was handcuffed and then bundled spread-eagled into the back of a police van outside Parliament, and many peaceful protests up and down the country have been violently broken up by police, determined to carry out the orders of those who wish to see the removal of the rights of free speech and free association in this country. Illegal arrests. A 19-year-old dancer, a visiting German doctor, scientist Piers Corbyn, and many hundreds of others have been arrested whilst either speaking, walking, or otherwise going about their business as free human beings over the last 6 months, whilst many more have been violently beaten. Unlawful and unconstitutional measures, including those in the Coronavirus Act 2020, which allow all kinds of outrageous breaches of natural, ancient, common and even modern human rights, and the Covert Human Intelligence Sources Bill, which will give many government agents a licence to commit many crimes, have been all but rubber-stamped by this toothless and useless Parliament, sleepily acquiescent in the destruction of the civil liberties our ancestors spilled blood for, and for which those MPs' predecessors asked them to. Allowing big business and retail giants to stay open while forcing small independent businesses to shut is another in a long line of attacks on the middle class, i.e. ordinary working people, which will result in more and more Britons becoming dependent on government welfare, while also raising the tax burden on the rest that might be lucky enough to survive the great COVID culling, and those public servants who have been on furlough and actually enjoying a rather pleasant 2020. Dictating socialising rules is something Roman emperors might even have hesitated at, but Boris probably can't believe his luck that people have become so docile through psychological operations that they are actually willing to not hug their own children or gather in large groups for fear of transmitting a disease that has a 99.5% recovery rate. Not conspiracy theory, SAGE documents and the Behavioural Insights team prove this is fact. How many more steps will our elected so-called representatives allow the executive, supranational bodies and billionaire business people to take before we find ourselves in irreversible tyranny? Elsewhere, here you can read about their transparent and open plans to completely tear up the normal fabric of society in order to impose a fourth industrial revolution, marketed to sound like a utopian natural progression, but which will actually mean the automation and smart contractization of most jobs that are currently done by human beings, leading to widespread poverty. All this might be understandable if the evidence did actually point to a pandemic. But outside of the telescreen and radio's omni-message of incessant and repetitive fear propaganda, the truth is that no hospitals are overrun with COVID patients. Hardly anyone even shows symptoms, and the only reason they are able to promote panic and keep the charade going is because they encouraged, and in many cases bribed, tens of thousands of people to go and get tested using a PCR test, which is known to give over 90% false positives, and even up to 100% if you raise the number of doubling cycles up past 45. Now, if you've missed it, there was an article in the November edition which referred to this and stated that they are using 45 cycles on a PCR test, and why that is important. So please go and watch that. Okay. Most of us don't figure in the ruler's future plans, and the buck stops with our MPs, who we pay to represent our interests. Many are currently hiding, but now is the time to ask them to do their jobs for those they supposedly protect and work for. And if they refuse, then they should rightfully step down, and we'll find people who will to replace them. Okay. So before I go, I think I'll read this article as well. It's quite short. This is still on page 2 of the December 2020 edition of this free newspaper, the Light paper. Plans for major satanic temple in Scotland. Aleister Crowley was the UK's leading Satanist, whose teachings are still heavily influence modern Satanists across the world today. He spent many years living at Boleskine House, it's a Scottish Gaelic name, Baal Os Cain, in the Highlands of Scotland. The OTO, or Ordo Templi Orientis, was the secret society that Aleister Crowley had taken over and led. The OTO, or Otto Society, now owned the site, approximately 10 acres, through a front organisation, the Boleskine House Foundation, and have a fund of about £1.4 million to restore it according to their vision. The plan is to turn it into the leading satanic temple in the UK. At page 97 of his book, Children for the Devil, published in 1991 by Methuen London, the British journalist and author Tim Tate wrote, "The OTO is today the most widely spread of all international satanic organisations. If Otto is permitted to fulfil their development plans for Baal Os Cain, or Boleskine House, the location will become a major satanic temple and a very active hub for Satanist abusers from across the world to visit that location and perform satanic ritual abuse, SRA, there and in its surrounding areas, posing a huge threat to both children and vulnerable adults." Crowley publicly boasted in his book, Magic in Theory and Practice, that he had himself carried out ritual killings of children. In that book, Crowley also wrote, "The bloody sacrifice has from time immemorial been the most considered part of magic. For the highest spiritual working, one must accordingly choose that victim which contains the greatest and purest force. A male child of perfect innocence and high intelligence is the most satisfactory and suitable victim." Wow. Crowley promoted the idea that the strong should dominate the weak and that people should do whatever they wish, regardless of whom such actions may hurt or even kill. Crowley's teachings amount to a moral imperative to do as one pleases, regardless of the harm that one's actions may have on others, and to kill anybody who attempts to stop one from doing this. This also comes across as a convenient and self-serving justification for satanic ritual abuse. The Otto is currently mounting an international letter-writing or email campaign targeted at the Highland Council to pressure them to approve their plans for developing Boleskine House. There is a counter-campaign to such international pressure, with a campaign against the development of Boleskine House because of the very dire threat that it will pose to children and vulnerable adults if the development plans are approved. If that happens, it will become a major centre for devil worship and SRA, satanic ritual abuse, in the UK. And it says here in a small box to write to the Highland Council about the planning application regarding Boleskine House. Correspondence should be sent to the CEO of the Highland Council, Donna Manson. Email address donna.manson@highland.gov.uk. Okay, so I'll leave it there for today. The next article is There's Nothing Great About This Reset by James Liggett. And I shall see you next time. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all the normal stuff. And take care of yourself. Thank you for stopping by. Bye.